Hello, my name is Roy Mossy. I'm with the Song Law Firm. In the last segment, we spoke about going to your attorney's office for the initial consultation. While you're there, as I may have mentioned, make sure you ask every question that comes to mind before you leave. If you forget something or something occurs to you later, most attorneys are happy to take a phone call or an email and give you the answer. Once you've gone through the retainer and have signed it, the process goes something like this. The attorney will contact the insurance companies, if necessary, the party involved in the accident to set up a claim. You will need a claim set up both for your medical bills, which in New Jersey is paid by your own insurance company if you own a car. If not, the rules are a little different, but we'll go by the basics for today. And the liability, the damages are paid by the person who is at fault. In a rear-end collision case, it would be that person, or a stop sign case, it would be that person. Something about insurance. In New Jersey, you have the option when you buy insurance, among many options, to purchase either a no limitation of lawsuit threshold or a limitation of lawsuit threshold. The no limitation permits you to sue for any injury, no matter how minor. The limitation, you're restricted to certain matters. If, God forbid, a loss of a fetus, a displaced fracture, but what we mostly see are injuries which have to qualify as a permanent injury under the law. A permanent injury under the law in New Jersey is defined as an injury which has not healed to date with medical treatment and is not likely to heal or will not heal with medical treatment in the future. Okay. So those policies are much cheaper than the no limitation policy, so most people buy them. So you need to know going in that regardless of whether the other person was at fault in hitting you, and assuming they were, and assuming they admit it, you still have to pass this threshold if you own or are subject to a certain policy. And there are other rules that go with it, but that's the general rule. Once you are treating, the attorney maintains contact with the insurance company. You may have to give a statement at some point to your own carrier, but not a whole lot happens while you are treating because we don't know how you're going to progress. If you completely recover and you have a limitation threshold, there may be no case, but that's good for you. You're healthy again. But so we have to wait until, and there are certain care paths that doctors have to follow in order to be paid. They have to treat you conservatively at first, then perhaps diagnostic testing, MRIs and things like that, and eventually if the solution, if you don't recover from the injury sufficiently, there could be injections, there could be surgery, various things that the doctors will tell you about. So we as the attorneys must wait until that process is complete because we can't assess your injury. Now, how do we assess your injury? Experience. No two cases are alike, but injuries and circumstances can be similar. A 20-year-old person is not going to be viewed the same as a 70-year-old person, and the various gradations in between. So it is a process, but it does need to wait until we have the complete records so that we can assess. Now, at this point, we try to settle with the insurance company. So the average attorney normally prepares a package, sends it into the carrier, and they talk about it. If the carrier makes an offer which the attorney recommends and the client agrees with, case is over. We try to do that because the next step is litigation, and that becomes a little more costly. Complaint filing is $250, there's service, there's depositions, but here's the usual sequence of what happens when a lawsuit is filed. And again, this can be within, it can be no longer than 2 years in New Jersey, but it can be close to that if you haven't gotten well yet. But thereafter, you have a complaint, there has to be an answer to the complaint, there has to be a discovery, which is depositions, written discovery, and perhaps an examination by the other side's doctor, and then eventually the matter would go to arbitration, and if the arbitration doesn't solve the case, you get a trial date. that entire process could take close to 2 years. The case can settle any time in that time if the parties agree after you finish treating. The trial, unless there's an appeal from the trial, which is another discussion, basically would end the case. And as I mentioned earlier, in an injury matter, you have to prove that the other person's at fault under the law and that your injuries pass the threshold if the threshold applies to you. And that's the basics of litigation, and I hope this has been helpful, and thank you very much for listening.